Many times on this show, we have told you about Medal of Honor recipient Vietnam veteran Captain Larry Taylor. We have told the story of what happened during the combat action in Vietnam on June 18, 1968. That action would decades later earn Taylor the Medal of Honor. This is President Joe Biden at Larry Taylor's Medal of Honor ceremony.
No moon, no stars, no light beyond the glow of their faces when they briefly turned and saluted Lieutenant Taylor for saving all four of their lives. He wouldn't see some of these men again until 30 years later at Army reunions. By that time, Lieutenant Taylor had long become Captain Taylor. He had flown more than 2,000 combat missions, and he received a Silver Star, a Bronze Star, 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, and 43 Air Medals. Thank God he's not putting them all on his chest. He'd have trouble standing. Incredible. No, really think about it. It's incredible.
Captain Taylor was a Cobra Helicopter pilot who landed his gunship in the middle of a firefight to save the lives of 4 men who were on the ground and in serious trouble that night. Captain Taylor passed away in late January, and today there's only one man living who knows what happened inside the cockpit of that helicopter during the mission. In today's episode, we talk to that man, J.O. Ratliff. This week, Mr. Ratliff will travel to Denver to speak at a ceremony as Captain Taylor's inducted into the U.S. Army Aviation Hall of Fame.
I'm going to speak briefly. They're allowed. They said 3 minutes. Boy, I could talk for probably 3 hours about the things I learned at under Larry's tutelage in the brief time that we served together in Vietnam.
My name is Josh Rowe, and this is Tomorrowtown, Tennessee.
First of all, I'm very honored to represent Larry's family and the rest, those of us that served with him and so forth. Which is what we're up there to do, is we're up there to recognize Larry for his heroic actions. And because he can't be there, by gosh, if I make it, I'm going to do the best I can in his stead. So that's a humbling and exciting opportunity for me. And I'm a little nervous about it, to tell you the truth. But, I'll either get off over that or I'll be nervous right on up to the end gate. Who knows? So it's an evening presentation, and I'm going to speak briefly. They're allowed. They said 3 minutes. Boy, I could talk for probably 3 hours about the things I learned at under Larry's tutelage in the brief time that we served together in Vietnam. But I'm not going to have a chance to do that. So there you go.
Well, let's go back a little bit. I think the thing that I know the most about you is from June 18th of 68, and I think probably a lot of our viewers and listeners the same. Tell us, kind of give us a little bit of the background that got you there, flying along with Captain Taylor, I guess Lieutenant Taylor at the time. During that mission.
Well, I joined the unit I don't remember exactly what day I shipped, but I think I joined the unit on March 12th. So I was still pretty new in country. And when I first got to Delta Troop, we were flying B-model guns. And because I'd cross-trained into the AH-1G, the Cobra, before I left the U.S., I'd been to that cross-training at Hunter Army Airfield. They started me. I flew a few lift missions, but primarily I was flying with the gun team. We had old B-model guns. They were the oldest guns left in Vietnam. There was a group across the runway from us. They had C-model guns, and they mocked us because we had these old antiquated rascals. And similarly, another group up in Lai Kay that was division headquarters. They all made fun of the Dark Horse guys or the Mustang guys because we had the oldest stuff in country. But we made do with it, and we had some testy missions. I'll tell you, that was TET was going on, and it was in the thick of the Tet Offensive when I got there. So, I learned, and I was green and scared, and just what it is for when most of us wind up in, I think, anyway, I can only speak for myself, but wind up in a combat situation where people are shooting live ammunition at you, by gosh, it kind of gets your attention. So, and it gets the adrenaline going. There's all that stuff that comes with it. So I had flown, I don't know how many hours, but I had flown multiple missions with Larry before the night of June 18th. And he was a terrific teacher, and I am blessed, and really it was a gift to have that time together with him. And then I think, I don't know if I told you, but the very next week, I got my orders to become an aircraft commander and then a fire team leader. I was looking through some old history stuff, and I saw that those orders came in on June 26th. So,
yeah. Were you ROTC? How'd you end up in Vietnam in the position that you were in at the time?
No, I enlisted to go to flight school. So I went to the warrant officer flight training program, and I enlisted with that in mind. And from a personal point of view, my father had been an aviator in World War II, and he flew. It was the Army Air Corps in those days. People of your generation don't know that, but I know it because that was what my dad called it. He didn't refer to the Air Force. He was in the Army Air Corps. He flew B-25s in North Africa and Italy. And in the course of that, he flew 51 missions. He was shot down twice, and he was injured severely enough in the second of those times that he was shot down that he had to be medevac back to the States. And sadly, in that second crash landing, he lost a crew member. In the first crash landing, he didn't lose anybody. And my father was always badly affected by that mentally. And he was wounded as well. But and I felt a personal, not a necessity, but just an urge, I guess, to kind of keep that Army aviation thing going in my family. So, and I had no clue what I might encounter when I get. Who does when you? I mean, it's a whole new ballgame when you get into a combat theater. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah, just talking to Captain Taylor through the years, and I talked to him several times, about the details of different missions and whatnot. And he said it was almost a nightly basis that you were in some kind of hairy situation. It wasn't a matter of, only a few times. You were in danger a lot out there.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's what the very nature of the Delta troop, the entire troop was on 24-hour standby to go to contact missions that were encountered by any part of the rest of the division. And they were armed. We had a big armored component. We had ground troops as well. So it was a pretty big operation, big area of operation. And we were the first responders anytime there was a contact anywhere in the whole division. We were the first to go, first called upon.
So tell me about the night of June 18th. I've heard the story from Dave and from Larry and read it in other accounts. And I understand that, the situation on the ground and all that, but when the way Larry tells it is that he got communication over the radio to not go and make the rescue, but he wasn't exactly sure who was on the radio. Could have been other people or whatever, and he made the decision, we're going to go do this. What were your thoughts when you realized what was about to happen?
We had we had snippets of conversation, and Larry ran a couple of things by me. I mean, it was fast. It was all fast. He knew more about the aircraft than I did. And he was back there in the command seat. And I said, well, let's go do it. I still had a little bit of 7.62 ammunition in the chin turret. And, you know, my instruction from Larry was to put down some covering fire as we went in and picked those guys up. And there was a lot of radio communication going on between us, and Dave Hill was probably the primary guy on the radio, I believe. I'm not certain of that. David might correct me on that. But in any case, Larry gave them some really salty advice on how they might position. They had some Claymore mines, and they, as I said, they were running low on munitions all the way around. And he just suggested to them what they might do to kind of throw the enemy who was in hot pursuit off as we came in to pick them up. And we had no idea what the center of gravity on the aircraft, how it was going to be. We knew that the weight component was all right because we'd expended all the heavy stuff we had. It was gone, and we figured, four big guys were probably going to pick them up with all their equipment at 1,000 pounds or so. And we were low on fuel, so we had power to spare, but not a hell of a lot else, to tell you the truth.
You mentioned earlier, you're scared a lot doing these missions, and I completely understand why. I can only assume when you realize what you're about to do, there were some feelings of this is going to be, hairy in that case.
Yeah, that for sure. And I'm sure I tossed out a couple of, we call them foxhole prayers, but I'm sure I did that because I've had a faith throughout my life, actually. And so I'm sure that was a part of what I did, but mainly I was thinking about those guys keeping their heads down instead of shooting us down. Those bad guys, that is.
Yeah. The first time I ever heard this story, I was at a VVA meeting, 2018, and they hadn't found you yet. They were still looking for that second eyewitness. And tell me that story from your end. From understand, they were trying to find you, but you were out of the country someplace, and it took them a while to find you. What do you remember about any of that?
Oh, I do recall a bit about that. At the time they were trying to reach me, we have a little place in Costa Rica. We were, I had retired, in both my wife and I had retired in 2009, and we spent our winters in Costa Rica from about Thanksgiving until tax time, about this time of the year, just because it snows in Virginia. It doesn't snow in Costa Rica. So, and I'm an old Wyoming kid. I grew up with snow, but I don't like it anymore. So that's where we were, and we were pretty difficult to reach. I think the very first thing that happened is somebody tracked my son down in Northern Virginia, and he said, no, my father's in Costa Rica. Then he passed word to me, and then when I got back, I reached out to I can't remember if it was Larry or Dave who I talked to first. And I had to have some clarification. I didn't remember some of the tangential stuff that fed into that correctly. I became about 2 weeks after June 18th, I became the awards writer for the Delta Troop. And my recollection, incorrect, was that I was the writer at the time of that event. Well, Lou Ray reached out to me and said, you were not, I was, Lou was. And he clarified some things to me about the mission and so forth. And I immediately got aboard and did what I could to see to it that Larry was properly accorded his Medal of Honor.
The Medal of Honor is one of those things that is, it's special for anyone who's worn the uniform to see that whole process play out. Because I know there were a lot of moments where they thought it wasn't going to work out. To see that happen the way it did, and you being so close to that story, what was that experience like for you to kind of see that come to fruition? And at the same time, as we know, Larry passed away less than 6 months after the date he was awarded. It kind of came at the right time as well.
It's like the success of a rain dance. It's all about the timing. And for sure, it was, my family and I were honored to be there and to see that very proper award presented to Larry. And because I had time on Capitol Hill in the interim between Vietnam and that event, I'd been at the White House a number of times, but that's kind of heady stuff, to tell you the truth, Josh. Well, you were there. You saw it, and it's not everybody that goes in and roams the halls of that very hallowed place. So, it was really, really a rewarding experience for me.
It really is. You mentioned that, just you walking in the East Room and looking around and thinking about the history of that room and what's happened in that place, and you see the Secretary of Defense over here and senators over here, and it's a lot to take in at once, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I understand, and so my experience was as soon as the ceremony ended, I had to go be on TV. So I missed out on a lot of the part where they opened up the hall and let you guys kind of stay and mingle and talk and that kind of thing. What was that experience like to just reconnect with some folks that you probably fought with or people that you knew through this process of trying to get the Medal of Honor for Captain Taylor?
Well, that was just really great. And there was a little core group of 5 or 6 of us who all served same old timeously, if I may, in Delta 1st to the 4th. And it was really just a terrific opportunity for us to get together. We had, in fits and starts, we had stayed in contact with one another over the years, but it was just a reunion, and it was just very special. And being able to enjoy the fruits of that reunion in the green room and the red room and the whatever that where Larry held court over in the corner. I can't remember what that room is. It's on the opposite side, opposite end of the building from the east. It's not called the West Room. I don't remember what it's called, but anyway, it was just all very nice and just a humbling but rewarding time.
One of the things that sticks out to me from, and I talked to Larry many times over the years, and on camera about three, 4 times, and it seemed to me that the sicker he got, the more candid he got about Vietnam, and he told me several times. It was obvious through the stories he told what the pilots meant to him. It was one of those things that when he talked about the pilots he flew with, that was some grade A stuff for him. And can you speak to that kind of like that relationship with him, and also just the other pilots and kind of what that meant for you?
It's a brotherhood, and I started out by I know that I said something about how appreciative I am for having had that time in training with Larry as I was getting my feet on combat ground, or in combat air, as it were, my fanny in combat airs. And yes, the fellowship amongst aviators is a very unique one. And I hear from some other guys who I participated in missions in support of, and it isn't necessarily just aviator. It's fellow combatants, that come from a theater like that. And it's given me some better understanding of some of the complications my father had in his life that I was familiar with. He died pretty early I was 13 when I lost my dad. And frankly, I didn't ever hear very much from him about anything he did. So it's it's just, I wanted to refresh myself. So I had a fairly recent conversation with Larry's widow, and we were chatting, and I just wanted to make sure that I could convey whatever her expressions and thanks are to the group there and so forth. And she said, when I met Larry in 1971, Tony said, and to tell you the truth, she said, I just kind of, when he started talking about military stuff, I always just kind of tuned that out because I didn't understand it. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's approximately what she said in a telephone conversation. Well, I can understand that because, and I've seen my children's reaction, my now adult children. I've seen my wife's reaction when we've talked about some of the things that we experienced, endured, whatever. And there's just a unique fellowship there that it's a lifelong bond. Trust me.
Yeah, I've experienced similar things where you try to tell stories and it just doesn't connect. And
right.
Yeah, I understand that completely.
Yeah. This a compliment to you, sir, is that our exchange now it will be helpful to me because I'm supposed to go up there and accept this thing in 3 minutes. Well, I'm a talkative old fart, I can't help that. So I'll be keeping an eye on my wife, who will be giving me hand signals and so forth, telling me to stay on topic and, wrap it up, Jack.
Let's finish with this thought then. Since you only have 3 minutes in the Hall of Fame ceremony, what do you want? What would you want people to remember about Captain Taylor? That maybe it's been said before, maybe it hasn't. But what are the things that you think is important that people remember about him?
His bravery, his coolness under fire. He was a tactician. I mean, he had training in ground activities, which I didn't. You go to school hour by hour on that when you're in the air and flying combat support. And Larry used those skills and that training in that particular mission on the night of the 18th of June. And he was always a collected guy. And my hat has always been off to him.
A big thank you to J.O. Ratliff, and a big thank you to you for listening to Tomorrowtown, Tennessee. This podcast is a production of NewsChannel 9, Fox Chattanooga, and Sinclair Broadcast Group Chattanooga. I hope you join me again real soon.